Hello, 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 and welcome to another Writer's Showcase. Going to be a little bit of a short one today, but here we go. Starting first, our magnanimous commissar, please welcome Mr. Carl.
Good to be back.
Always a pleasure to have you, my friend. And always a pleasure to have you, my friend.
Yeah.
And we have our other guest. Please welcome Excellent.
Let's take a moment and praise the so my intentions are known. See, I have pity in watching you suffer.
Hello.
Hello.
Here in what is it? Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island.
All right. So, how are we going to do this? Who's going first?
Well, any time constraints? First off, we just ask time constraints. Anybody?
I got nothing.
No time constraints, but I would prefer if Carl went first.
All
That
right.
solves things completely. Go for it, Carl.
Okay. So, we're continuing Shenna's story, and she just recently got back from a less than successful meeting where she had some very unhappy revelations about Gareth and ended up pushing him into the canal. But luckily was able to get back to the Magisterium when a friend offered her a light back home, where she met with Magistress Karna, and has now gone to her office to discuss, in Chapter 15, a future with the Magisterium. Let us continue. Magistress Karna's office was a tight, windowless stone chamber, even smaller than the dormitories. Most of the space in the room was taken up by a large wooden desk, nearly as wide as the room itself. 2 wall lanterns burned brightly in each corner above the desk, their red, unnatural, upside-down flames pouring light mercilessly down into the chamber. A small 3-legged stool stood meekly before the desk, with a tall, threatening bookcase looming ominously behind it along the shadowed back wall. "Take a seat, Shenna," Karna said. It was neither an order nor an invitation. Karna simply expected to be obeyed, and again Shenna did not dare refuse the woman. She set herself down upon the hard wooden stool and tried not to seem nervous. "Now then," Karna said, setting herself down behind the desk and spreading her hands out across its empty surface. "As you have no doubt gathered, the course cycle is now concluded. There is now to be a 4-week recess before the next cycle begins. Now, most students choose to return home for this interlude, but—" "No," Shenna said flatly. It would be years before she would risk returning to Riverwatch. Karna nodded. "Yes, I suspected you might refuse. Well, in cases like these, the Magisterium may permit you to remain on site during the break. You will also retain full access to the refectory and administration offices. In exchange, however, you will be assigned duties in order to earn your keep. Do you understand?" "What sort of duties?" Shenna asked. Nothing too strenuous, she hoped. "I shall produce a list," Karna said, and began to rummage through a series of drawers in the desk. As she went about her search, Shenna's mind lingered on the desk itself. A masterpiece of luxurious hardwood, longer than Shenna was tall, with intricate carvings flowing across its spotlessly polished surface. It was an impressive piece, to be sure. Did every single magisterium instructor have a desk like this in their office? How could they afford that? Come to think of it, how had they even managed to get this wooden monstrosity into this tiny little office in the first place? Its smallest dimension was easily twice the width of the doorway. They would have needed to knock through the frame to get it in. Maybe they had disassembled the desk and reassembled it inside the office piece by piece. Or perhaps they had put the desk in first when the building was constructed and built the chamber up around it. Or maybe there was some other way that Shenna didn't know about yet. Magic could do just about anything, after all. There are 4 tasks for which you are presently qualified at the moment, Karna said, finally producing a small sheaf of parchments. First, distributing magic to the public and the attendant record-keeping and financial work. Second, unloading cargo at the Watergate. Third, patrol duties in the city. And fourth, magic collection at the Moon Spire. The first 2 duties take place during the daylight hours, and the last 2 are night duties. You must select one of each. Do you understand? Yes, Magistress, Shenna nodded. Karna set the parchments down on the desk and regarded Shenna intently. Well? Shenna blinked. Now? Naturally. Shenna quickly thought over her options. She decided on magic distribution for her day duty, easily enough. There was a possibility she might run into Yannick there, and besides, cargo hauling sounded terribly exhausting. As for night duties, well, Shenna didn't know how much physical labor was involved with collecting magic at the Spire. Maybe it was more than patrol duty demanded, or maybe not. On the other hand, patrol duty might bring her into contact with people who knew Gareth. She might end up spending her nights forced to listen to someone singing his praises. The very thought made her want to retch. Magic distribution to the public and collection at the Spire, Shenna said. Good, Karna nodded. I'd hoped you might select those 2. You did? Of course, Karna said, taking a pen and making a few strokes on one of the parchments. Lots of writing and reading involved with those tasks. You'll be sure to get a lot of practice. Additionally, as magic distribution takes place in the library, I recommend you spend your free time perusing the volumes. Lots of good things hidden away in books if you're willing to put in the effort to go looking for them. Shenna hadn't yet gotten a proper chance to look at the Magisterium library, but she had peeked through a doorway a few times while passing on her way to and from classes, and what little she had seen already beggared her imagination. Towering shelves of leather-bound tomes reaching at least 3 stories high if the number of balconies were to be believed. More books than Shenna could possibly read in a lifetime, all gathered together in a great feast of knowledge. And Shenna could hardly wait to get in and eat her fill. In fact, I've compiled a list for you, Karna said, producing another smaller slip of parchment from her desk and handing it to Shenna. I recommend you start with these volumes in particular. It should leave you with a well-prepared foundation of knowledge for what comes next. What comes next? Shenna asked as she slipped the parchment into the silk bag with her cosmetics. Why, the next course cycle, of course, Karna said. Never forget that your true purpose here is to serve as the pilot student for my new Department of Undead Constructs, and as such you need to stand out as a model student. A great deal is yet expected of you. I shall endeavor to meet all expectations, Shenna said, trying not to seem intimidated by the responsibilities placed upon her. See that you do, Karna nodded. In any case, I shall pass on your choices of duties to the administrators, and your schedule shall be waiting for you at breakfast tomorrow. You may depart for the evening. Thank you, Magistress, Shenna said, making a respectful nod and rising from the stool. One last thing, Karna said. I can see you've put a lot of thought and consideration into this. Karna waved her hand up and down. This outfit of yours. But in the future, do please keep to your robes when working. Of course, Magistress. Shenna made one last hasty bow and slipped out the door. It wasn't until she stepped out into the cool night air that Shenna realized just how much she had been sweating. It had been a few months since Shenna had last crossed paths with Mistress Karna, and she had forgotten how intense the woman could be. And in a few weeks I'll be taking lessons from her, Shenna noted. She was not looking forward to that at all. The refectory was in the process of closing up for the evening when Shenna passed through on her way to the dormitories. She snatched up one of the last pieces of flatbread and shoved the cold mass of it unceremoniously into her mouth as she trudged up the stairs. Shenna heaved aside the door to her chamber and collapsed onto her bed, tired as a corpse. Elira was already gone. Her bed sat freshly made for the first time in months, and her trunk lay open and empty. Shenna didn't quite know how to feel about that. Insulted that Elira had left without a word, angry at her for effectively running away with Gareth when her back was turned, relieved that she wouldn't have to confront Elira about it. Oh, what did it matter? It was done, and there was no undoing it. Shenna slid languidly off her bed and began to remove her corset, blouse, skirt, and underskirt. She carefully folded the garments on her bed before opening the chest to store them. But before Shenna could set the bundle of clothes into the trunk, her eyes alighted on the small leather bag at the bottom, the one that Gareth had given her so long ago. Shenna scooped up the bag and dumped its contents out onto her hand, watching as the glass moon slowly came to life, filling the chamber with that silvery illumination that only Shenna's eyes could see. It was the last thing connecting Shenna to Gareth. A part of her wanted to hurl the wretched bauble out the window and let a canal swallow it up. Another part of her wanted to hold on to it, in case Gareth came to his senses and returned to her. And yet another part of Shenna wanted to slap the other two parts for letting their emotions do all the thinking. As she stared, the flutter of wings announced Athanasius' coming, and Shenna looked up as her crow alighted on the trunk's open lid with a songberry in its beak. Shenna took the gift and gave the crow a quick stroke upon its head before returning her focus to the glass moon. "What do you think, Ath?" Shenna asked. "Should I keep it or get rid of it?" Athanasius looked at the glass moon, then edged along the trunk lid towards the jewel for a closer look. The bird opened its beak and put it around the gem, perhaps fiddling to get a decent grip. After a few moments, he jumped away in surprise to the other end of the trunk lid, and then slowly crept back along the edge to inspect the bauble again. He gave Shenna one last curious look, and began preening his feathers, thoroughly uninterested in Shenna's emotional quandary. Shenna sighed and slipped the glass moon back into its rough leather purse. She dropped it back into the chest with her other clothes and lifted Athanasius onto her shoulder before closing the lid. It was too late in the evening to think about these things anyhow. Shenna kicked off her slippers and rolled back onto the bed. She was in the middle of sliding herself beneath the covers when the chamber door opened. What was going on? Had Elira forgotten something? That would be just typical of her to make a scene over some trifle. "What is it?" Shenna growled, like a bear roused from hibernation. "Shen?" a familiar voice cried out. "That you? What a triff, I tell you." "Talene?" Shenna growled. "What's going on?" "Got bumped in here with you," Talene said, slipping a small sack into the trunk that had so recently been Elira's. "The Maggies always try to move people into new rooms during the in-betweens. Saves on magic, you see." "I guess that makes sense," Shen nodded languidly. "Wrapping it in for the evening, are you, Shen?" Talene said more softly. "Don't fret none, I'll keep it down. Got no walk duty tonight, anyhow. Thanks. Shenna nodded and slipped fully under her covers. The sounds of Talim preparing for bed lasted only a few moments. Soon, a simple "Night, Shen," announced the fall of peace across the darkened chamber. Shenna savored the sacred stillness of night and prepared to surrender herself to slumber. And yet, one thing still itched at the back of her mind. "Hey, Talim," Shenna ventured. "Can I ask you a question?" "Of course, Shen," Talim chirped. "What do you need?" Did you run into Gareth? I mean, after... Did I? Taline laughed. Gareth says you plunked him in the drink. I shouldn't have stammered, grateful for the shadows to hide her blush. Well, yes, I did. You're gonna gotta spin me some in the morning, Shen, Taline said. I bet you got quite a story there. And that's the end for now.
Oh, that's a shorter one.
Mm,
Very nice.
Good transition.
That's the thing. This really is kind of the in-between of some major arcs. This
Right.
really is just a close one chapter, open up another.
Yeah, I've been following with I haven't attended a showcase in a while, but I've been listening to them, and I've been keeping up with your story, Carl. So I remember listening to the last one where Gareth offended Shannon, and he was just excusing it off as she punched him in the face and he fell in the river. I was like, okay, this is some good stuff.
Yep. He has officially lost best boy status.
Yeah, I noticed what you did there with the writing. I was like, oh, okay. This is one of those betrayal moments, in a sense.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna be hearing more of Taline and her relationship with Gareth in the next chapter, and we'll
Nice.
be. Let me see. Yeah. Ah, yes, Becca. Good to point out the undead stuff is going to become a bit more important. Maybe a few more chapters. We still have to get through the next, but once the next course cycle starts up, we're going to be seeing a lot more of it and a lot more of the social implications of how zombies are, well, undead constructs. We're fancy like that. We don't use zombies here. We got big words. But we'll be seeing how they react with the rest of the world.
Very nice. I'll be looking forward to that next one. Excitement for zombies, indeed. Fantasy zombies. Oh, speaking of, I got something like that in what I'm reading today.
Oh, what a transition we got.
Right.
Here.
It's not exactly zombies, but you'll see what I mean. It's very reminiscent of that.
Oh yeah.
It's even if it's hidden strategically under your tongue. Yeah.
Fantasy zombies as opposed to real ones.
Yeah.
Would zombie films be considered fantasy? The Walking Dead, Evil Dead, would that be considered fantasy, or is that just horror?
Well, that's the thing. Fantasy and sci-fi are often considered the same genre, lumped together under speculative fiction. So it could be that zombies are just another branch of the speculative fiction family.
Oh, I love that, because my story is very scientific and fantasy at the same time. It connects the two together.
Well, here's the thing about it. It really depends on how the zombies are made is the main thing.
Indeed.
If they're made by magic, like if it's Game of Thrones or Rise of the Dark Queen written by moi, it's magic. But if it's a disease or science, then it's science fiction.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's the thing. I remember one time I was designing a zombie story that was meant to be like a zombie a zombie non-apocalypse. Like the zombies, there are zombies running around and terrorizing everybody, but the world basically goes on. We might lose like a few villages out in the boonies somewhere, but I mean like Boston, New York, Philly, those monsters aren't going anywhere. And there's like I deconstruct all how these certain elements of society come along, and everyone's out, of course, trying to find a cure for the zombie virus. And of course, eventually, the twist is halfway through the arc that you learn out it's actually not a zombie virus; it's a talisman.
Hmm.
And everyone just says, "Huh? Oh man, we've been shouting down the wrong hole, haven't we?"
Fascinating. I do that same thing. A little bit of we do a little bit of misdirection with what are the voices? What are they? Are they aliens? Are they the undead? Ooh, you shall see halfway through the story. Big reveal.
Well, now that you've been buttering us up for that, let's get to it.
Yep, it's been a little while since I've been on here, and I haven't written in a while either. So this
Feel free to
chapter,
give us a recap. We got
I
plenty of
shall. I'll give you a nice one to get you on re-caught up. This chapter 5, I wrote it a while ago, but today I did a little bit of editing to make it more up to date to my current writing. That's how writing is. We gotta always edit and improve over time. Yeah, let me think. So what do you guys want to recap on? Everything?
May as well.
Right. Okay. I'm writing supernatural fiction in a sense, sci-fi, fantasy, pretty much all of it, but it's mostly supernatural. This is a story about people who live with entities that float around the air that speak to them, right? And that's what I introduced in chapter 1. Left a lot of questions on what are these things and why are there soldiers around trying to check on people and keep them from listening to the voices. And then I clarified that a little more in chapter 2 and 3, where we went into the backstory of there are people who have the voices enter inside of them and empower them. They give them powers and they can do stuff. And so we saw that in Nathan's childhood, where his family was attacked by the slain. That's what they're called, people with tattoos. And the tattoos are representative of they've united with a voice, with the Rukim. And we saw that in his past, where his older sister was killed by them, and his hometown was destroyed, and he was almost killed. And then I left off in chapter 4, where we go back to the present. I'm trying to remember what it is I changed. That's right. The last time I was on here, I didn't exactly like how I ended the chapter with and then at that very moment, 3 people just lost their lives on the wall. No. I was like, no, I'm not going to do it that way. As we were discussing in the showcase, I realized I could do it a different way. So what I did was I changed it to we go to the perspective of the Rukim for the first time ever, and I give a little bit more clarification, and I give like a little bit of descriptions, like they have many eyes. They have wings, scales, stuff like that. Really, really cryptic stuff where they're bored. They're bored out of their minds, and they're realizing they can't really get into Nathan's mind or anyone in the family while they're setting up for the wedding. And then all of a sudden, they feel something. They feel something change in the air. They feel a intense energy, and all of them flock to the wall, and they realize 3 people were just killed. And the chapter ends where Nathan feels the movement, because when they move around, people can feel them. They can't see them, but they can kind of feel them, like wind, like a sharp gust of wind. And so Nathan felt that, and he goes, and it ends where he says, Nathan looks up and raises an eyebrow. He felt a sudden shift in the air, a very, very fast movement from the invisible ones. What just happened with the Rukim? And that's how that chapter ends. So yeah, these chapters are fairly short. They flow into one another. So as I present, I'll give recaps of the last ones, because they directly flow into one another. It's one of those stories. I don't know what those are exactly called. Do you guys know what those are called? Like the short chapter novels that just flow right into the other.
Not particularly. I'm not sure there's a special
Some-
word for it, at least.
I don't think there is. The closest I can think of is like a pulp novel.
Right. Okay. All right. Hopefully, I did a good job there. As you can see, I'm not very not very good at this right now. Trying my best.
Early days yet. Early days.
Yep. So we're on chapter 5, still fairly new into the story. And just for a recap, for clarifications on terminologies in this story, Rukim are the words they use for the vestiges, for the voices, and slain are people who are empowered by them. They're not really humans anymore. They become something more. So I just want to help you guys out as you see those terminologies as I read. All right. Becca and everyone, feel free to. I'm not going to be looking at the chat during reading, so feel free to comment anything that you want to comment as I read throughout, and I'll look at it after I finish. I want all the criticism. I want all the suggestions. Anything you don't like, anything you do like, I want it all. Any sentences that aren't very good, help me out. I'm trying to be better. All right, let's begin. So, chapter Hey 5, and these chapters are the Hebrew alphabet. So, Hey is 5. All right. His gasps and cries never utter a sound. The soldier looks down and sees it, choking as the sudden strike causes blood to fall from his lips, a sword piercing through his lung. There on the western watchtower of the fort's outer wall, the patrolling soldier looks around slowly in horror at his fellow patrolmen. Out of each of them, swords instantly slice back out. His vision blackens and the ground soars towards his face. The red pool slowly moves its way along the concrete. It spreads as it travels there on the wall. 3 hooded figures splash through the liquid life. 2 of them hold blades, both covered in crimson. The third stands in the middle. A spear drips red on its tip from his right hand. Good, Elias, Nora. One of the hoods speaks, voice deep and cold, with a slight accent, Eastern. His voice sounds deep and quiet, with a hinting authoritative resemblance of a leader. No alarms have been sounded. Not yet. The 2 with swords lower the hoods as they look around. One of them, a woman, reveals long blonde hair, a diamond tattoo on her forehead, and diamond tattoos on her right hands and palms. She looks patiently ahead as small designs and tattoo markings glow purple along with her eyes, right below them on her face. She looks straight ahead towards the houses in the city. She scans the inside of the fort. The other, a man, lowers the hood to reveal greasy, long silver hair. He shakes his head and grins. Along his shirtless body, he has many tattoo markings all throughout his skin, and some tattoo markings around his eyes and forehead. He grins sadistically as his blue eyes dart all around the sights within the walls. A twisted expression fills his face. The third, the one who spoke in the middle, remains hooded. He stands still and looks within. Gear is attached to him all around, and on his waist are holsters for many swords and weapons. A holster is lashed onto his back where he places the spear as well. He turns around and looks at the other 2. Within the darkness of the hooded face, they see only gray eyes scanning them. Your target will be the barracks, the eyes quietly command. The hood turns and faces the city. You know what to do. The woman nods and closes her eyelids. She focuses. Immediately, the diamond tattoos on her forehead and hands begin to hum and glow. She holds her hands in a strange posture as the rest of the tattoos on them and on her body begin to glow as well. Communication, she speaks. The word repeats a second time. Her lips remain closed, though. Communication. The first time is clear as a spoken word. The second time, the word echoes, louder, even though her mouth remains silent. The second word rattles and bounces in the air and then inside both of the other 2's heads, as if originating from within. Uncomfortable, opposite, unnatural. Her eyes open, no longer gray. The tattoos in her eyes are glowing purple. A low hum can be heard from the glowing colors. That will never not bother me. Silverman shudders. He smacks his ear and shakes his head. Nora, darling, is there any way you can maybe lower the volume just a wee bit? Her purple glowing eyes look at him coldly. No. Elias scratches his ears and shrugs. Worth a try. The hooded leader stares ahead, silent. The others, he mutters. Not fully a question, not fully a statement. Elias turns around and another member weakly thrusts herself onto the wall. A tattooed woman, just like the others. Midnight dark in skin complexion and covered almost completely in tattoos. No, like that. That's worded. That needs to be fixed. Dressed in only a tank top and some shorts, she breathes heavily as she struggles to get to her feet, pushing her long, thick, curly hair out of her face. With every heavy, exhausted breath she takes, her glowing green tattoos and eyes pulsate with her. Power, exhausted and used, struggling along with its weak contender. A fourth slain has arrived. The first three turn back around and look at her. Lucille, the hooded leader, stares at her and nods slowly. I thank you for your spell today. Makoto, sweetheart. The dark-haired woman stands up and straightens. She places one hand on her hip and another she waves into the air. It is not merely me who to thank, she says dramatically, but the gods, darling. Makoto blinks. The gods. Lucille smiles wide and thrusts her hands around in a slow dance. Still glowing green, all her tattoos and eyes grow in slight intensity, humming ever so quietly. She gazes into the sky as if dancing with a lover, of someone who is obviously not there. All of them, however, know about the voices. They know very well who she speaks of. The gods! Oh, so how many and so benign, so how lustful and how so divine. She holds out one of her hands, and the green tattoos all throughout her arm quickly intensify in brighter shades of green, before green flames ignite and soar out of her fingers, dancing into the wind. From there, larger green flames ignite and flurry out of her arm itself, as she stares in wonder at the sights. The flames do not burn her skin. Lucille shows her teeth in wicked delight. She gazes intensely into them all with green pulsating eyes. The gods who speak and grant us such magnificent power. She giggles as she waves away the flames. Who else could we possibly thank? Makoto blinks. Right. Nora and Elias turn and look at each other. All from different backgrounds and different regions, each member of this group has different views on the world. It's clear Lucille is one who worships the voices in the air. Makoto feels them, a sudden rush and flurry of entities, flooding the unseen sky above them. Their movements create a strong gust of wind that thrusts all four of the group's clothing and hair into the breeze. Makoto turns to behind Lucille, back to the desert below the wall. It is perfect. He cannot see a single one. I thank you once again, Lucille, for carrying out that spell so perfectly. Lucille smiles and waves her hands in a strange, mesmerizing way. Of course, darling, of course. With a thrust of her fingers aligned just right into the cosmos, green lights flurry around her, charging with energy out of the thin air. She chants a strange tongue, and Makoto, Elias, and Nora all take a step back, feeling the intensity of the power. Multiple Rukim summon instantly into Lucille's casting, into her chants and into her lights. Multiple Rukim empower her words with great strength and energy. Then, just like that, she aims her hands at the desert behind the wall and tosses the lights that she formed away as green sparks of energy fly into the sky. Makoto steps forward and looks into the desert in which they came. Now he can see them. A veil has been lifted. 50, 60, no, more, men and women, armed, all now approach the wall. A bubble, or a camouflage of sight, was cast in front of them, to blind all forward from the fort to see their presence arriving. That's not really worded very well. Forgive that. A very difficult spell, and one very difficult to maintain. Lucille has pulled it off. She has allowed an army to approach this place unseen. They walk in almost perfect silence, unnatural, strange. They approach the wall and begin to climb the ropes the three tattooed ones left for them. They climb in sync, strangely similar, too similar. All unique humans in appearance, of every age and ethnicity, yet so similar in movement and direction. Many of them chatter their teeth. Some grind them. Lucille collapses and buckles to her feet from exhaustion. Elias quickly shouts and runs over to catch her. Makoto looks quickly at them, before then returning his sight to the ones climbing the ropes. They climb the wall and line up one by one. They stand in formations before the pool of blood and the four tattooed leaders in front of it. None of them tattooed themselves. Their eyes, however, are all deep, pitch black. Every last one, all colorless, all black like the night. Some stare unblinking, some blink slowly. Elias grins when he sees all of them, still holding the exhausted Lucille in his hands. The crazies, they're here! Lucille pushes Elias off of her as she straightens herself to sit down. Panting heavily, she looks up at Makoto the leader, her eyes now brown and no longer glowing, and her tattoos now black and lost of color, drained of all that power. Just as Sakurai has promised, she pants. A dozenfold of thralled, and a spell to keep you hidden. She breathes in heavily. The gods have granted you this opportunity. Feed them now. The air shifts with much energy. Makoto looks at Lucille, then at the black-eyed, possessed humans, then at the two others. Hordes of Rukim, of invisible entities, flood the wall and the air all around them. Multitudes of gnashing teeth, of hungry vestiges, have joined together here in one place for one event. A slaughtering. Elias walks over to the other side of the wall and looks into the city within. He smiles widely as he opens his cloak and reveals firearms and explosive weapons of all kinds, holstered to his body and waist. He pulls out a grenade launcher and readies the weapon with teeth wide. Me and Lucille have gathered all of them like you wanted. They wanted to meet the cannons. He lets out a childish giggle. Oh man, these deaths today will be enough to keep us alive for 100 years. Makoto grunts. This is true. This is how slain stay immortal. Lives for lives, he brought them here to help him. This is a benefit of all the slain and possessed that are here, as well as the source, Dakurai, the slain who supplied them. And for everyone listening, this next sentence is going to be indented. When I whisper, that means that the voices are speaking. They are yours, the dark-eyed thralls. You have their command. A voice calls out to Makoto, deep and strong, ancient and experienced. Many other spectators of Rukim watching part ways in wonder and fascination to let this one pass before them. Makoto has known this one for a long time, and it knows him. This specific Rukim, This specific Rukim is the reason he is here, in this fort in the middle of nowhere. The reason Makoto, a usual lone wanderer, called upon help from an infamous slain tribe leader, Dakurai, who gifted him with these 3 slain and the zombies that lie behind him. It has what he wants. It knows that it is here. These thralled are not like you, but they are driven by us. We will make them fight. They are here because of me. They will die for you. We promise. Good. Makoto replies to the voice. Do not disappoint me. You led us all here. It had better be here. I guess you'll have to find out. Get to work, Makoto. Sarcastic and sly, and always so deceptive and so cryptic. The voices, or these gods, as Lucille calls them, prove time and time again to be wretched entities not worth trusting or reasoning with. Makoto spits on the ground in disgust. He desires to not depend on this beast. However, he doesn't have much of a choice. It's the only one who has information he wants, the only one who knows what he is looking for. So now it's playing with him. Makoto turns around to Elias and Nora, and then to Lucille on the ground and the ones behind her. Elias grins excitedly. The man's silver eyes begin to glow bronze as he thinks about what he's about to do. Nora stares back, her eyes and tattoos lightly glowing purple and humming like machines as she patiently waits. Behind both slain, statues of Rukim-filled men and women stare unblinking, all eyes pitch black and waiting in unison. Controlled, possessed. Makoto gives out his words. Elias, lead the thralled with me. Destroy everything, spare nothing. Nora, inform us what you see. You are our eyes and ears. You are the key to our success here. Do not disappoint me. Nora nods. She closes her eyes and focuses. Her tattoos hum louder and glow brighter. Her eyelids give a purple hue from the light increasing underneath them. Makoto looks at the tired Lucille. Thank you for what you have done, truly. You may rest until you are ready to fight. These beasts drain all who use their power. Gods. Gods, Lucille corrects as she winks at him. Makoto blinks. Distract this city, he continues. Destroy it from above. I will seek the center, the fort itself. All of the thralled, the black-eyed humans nod, all at once. The hooded face turns to Elias and signals with his eyes, then back to the city. He clutches his spear and immediately jumps off the wall. He falls completely out of sight. A sound of impact is heard below, yet his voice continues speaking clearly as if he never left. An unnatural echoing coming from within their ears, calm, as if uninjured and unaffected by the fall. His voice echoes only one word: begin. Nora's powers have begun to work. Elias grins and loads an explosive shell into his grenade launcher. He snaps it back in joy. How exciting. He hasn't had this opportunity to do a raid on humans this big in a long time. Dakarai has been focusing on keeping his tribe safe. Sparkles of bronze electricity hiss and fizzle from his glowing tattoos on his hands. From his arms, they cackle into tiny lightning bolts, flashing like miniature storms in the sky right there above his hands. Yes, sir. He walks forward and jumps off the wall right behind his leader. Half of the black-eyed thralls throw over ropes and climb down after them. They do not jump themselves. Nora moves to the side and travels along the wall. She unsheathes the sword from her waist. The rest of the thrall following the two men follow her instead. The rest of the thrall not following the two men follow her instead. Lucille relaxes and lays down on the concrete. Many more of the thrall begin to arrive on the wall from climbing it, and many of them carrying massive backpacks full of equipment. The ones within the fort, led by Makoto, walk forward and approach the farms and houses outlining the city. The ones above begin to unload their bags and set up the equipment. They set up the metal gears and use the tools to build together the pieces. Nora looks around the wall, and the possessed ones set up the weapons of war. Explosive warheads surround them. The Rukim surround her. The Rukim surround them all. They stare as they watch, hordes and cathedrals of them, anxious, awaiting, excited. All throughout the city, bored Rukim scurry quickly to the place where 3 soldiers have just died, to the place where a powerful spell of their own domain was cast by an experienced magician woman. They inhale the fumes and the fuel of the bloodshed, as the rest anxiously await their plates of feasting decay. The thralled humans emotionlessly pull out the explosive warheads and place them on the ground. They aim the now-built mortar cannons towards the city within. The Rukim are pleased. All right, that was probably my worst presentation I've ever done. I'm done. Oh my goodness, I need to rehearse more.
It's okay. It's
What would
okay.
you say was, what did you feel was lacking about it, I suppose?
I need to practice the reading, so I put more dramatic and emphasis on the right things at the right times. I feel like the writing's okay. There's a few parts that I noticed were a little off in wording, but that's because some last minute editing. But presentation wise, not my best.
I think that's the thing. Becca has a comment. She says she doesn't know if she was distracted at the beginning for a place description, but I also feel a bit lost.
Okay.
Whenever that's the thing, when in doubt, describe where the people are.
Right.
You know,
They're on the wall.
Especially if you haven't done it in this particular chapter, because someone. Generally when you read to the end of the chapter and then leave it there. Someone could probably put the book down and then bring it up. And if they put the book down and pick it up right here, they also might feel a little bit lost. So don't be afraid to just do a little bit of a previously on,
Or even like do an establishing
that.
shot. Or do an establishing shot of the location.
Right, I appreciate
what I did, where the first thing I did was describe the character's office.
Right, that's normally a thing that's in books that can be easily forgotten, but extremely important. I appreciate that, thank you. So I should definitely clarify that this is the wall. They're on the western watchtower of the fort's outer wall. Yeah.
Maybe even describe what the fort looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, desert city in the middle of the desert, and with 4 walls outlining it with watchtowers at every corner. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Your people descriptions, however, are spot on. Cool. I'm not sure what that means, but thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like
Yeah,
your
I really got a
descriptions
sense
of
of
how
what
people.
like.
Yeah.
All right. Strengths and weaknesses. Have at it.
I think that like it could just so it's a deliberate choice to have it in present tense.
Yes.
Okay.
I completely forgot to mention that. I forget how jarring that is to listen to. Every time I forget to mention, oh yeah, guys, I'm writing in present tense.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. There were kind of like mostly it was just slight word choice changes here and there. It wasn't anything too like big. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. It was just one that stood out to me. I didn't write down. I'll look back over it and check. Like maybe.
Gotcha. Oh, thanks, Becca. That's good. That's good to hear. Awesome. Yeah. I try not to overdo the descriptions, but I try to do them just right, like what I see in most writing. Yep. Yeah. What did you guys think of the sequence of events? I have my own criticisms in my head, but I'd like to hear any that y'all would present.
I think the initial burst was pretty good, but I kind of don't fully understand, like, other than killing people, what the objective of the Rakim is. Like they're like under their means to get to their end, like what their plan is to get to, like whatever place they're getting to. I mean,
That
That's
may be
an excellent
intentional
point.
if we want to preserve the underlying motive, to preserve the mystery.
mhm.
That's a good point. Yeah, that is true. I feel like it should definitely be obvious by now, and especially if you're coming from the previous chapters, that they like it when people die. It feeds them. It gives them
Mhm.
energy. I hope that's clear.
Yeah,
And
that part's clear. It's just mainly like what exactly are they doing? Like
right,
what exactly are they? I mean, like what's their progression? Like
right.
I
Okay.
couldn't quite picture that in my head. Maybe it's just me, but
Well, what if I told you that in the long run of the story, they are beings who want revenge for what humanity did to them?
That
okay.
would be very interesting.
Yeah,
I
without
agree.
spoiling too much. Without so that's an interest. I definitely want to focus on the most interesting things and use those as hooks to keep people engaged, right? That's definitely an interesting thing. The question is save that for later or use it now.
Mm,
I was
I would, yeah,
thinking,
save it. Yeah,
yeah,
save
save
it.
it.
Yeah,
I
that's a
think
pretty big revelation.
Cool,
I,
cool.
I was thinking the main thing that I was thinking of was like I think like I was having a hard time picturing like how they're progressing through the city toward what their objective is. That was kind of my
Oh,
maybe
you
not
mean like
exactly.
like moving, like
Yeah,
transversing?
yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that wasn't clarified at all. That's a good point. Oh, think of it as like I mean, it's hard to describe, but that they basically float. They fly around. They go wherever people go, and they transverse places. And they each one looks different from each other too, so they're not all exactly the same. Yeah, I
Mm.
mean, I could put in there just a little, sprinkles of this one thrusted its wings and flew, and then I can leave you who don't even know what they are going. Wait, so they have wings? Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I did not get that impression at all.
Nice,
Uh,
nice.
Yeah.
so yeah, that might be something to consider because I didn't really get that idea.
Awesome. Well, I introduced 4 characters and a bunch of people who are possessed. What are your thoughts on the pacing of like how I presented each person with their unique personalities
Mhm.
and powers too?
Yeah.
It comes across pretty good, I thought.
Nice. All right, that's good. Yep, I just definitely need to. When I show up on these, I need this one. I kind of forced myself to be here because I hadn't been in one in a while. I feel like I should, get back to the writing mode, and I feel like I'll do a way better job.
Yep. Multicolored fire is always very good.
Oh yeah. I definitely wanted it. So I don't know if it was. I hope that it came across clear. Makoto, the leader, it's unknown what he can do, but that's to be seen as of yet. Same with Elias, the silver-haired guy. But with Nora and Lucille can cast green flames from her tattoos, and Nora can communicate like telepath. Hence why when he jumped off the wall and he said the word, it echoed within their heads. And why when she said communication, it doubled itself a second time. And then Elias slapped his head and he was like, "Can you turn that down, please?" Yeah. What are y'all's honest thoughts on that? Feel free to be brutal if you desire.
It's good. I like it.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about it other than it's very interesting. I think it gives some good flavor. There's nothing like there's nothing like terribly wrong about it that I could see. Nothing inconsistent.
Cool.
So
And, wait, hold on, just one really quick. Becca, it's funny how you said, or you're saying I liked Green Fire Lady, and definitely an inspiration for personality is kind of like Ursula from The Little Mermaid. Like think of that kind of character, like that kind of
with
sass, and like she's a witch, right? And The Little Mermaid, she has that sass, and yeah, like how do you describe that?
kind of a Jamaican flair.
Ursula was very much based off of a drag queen.
Yeah, you excited for Melissa
interesting.
McCarthy? You excited for Melissa McCarthy to play her in the remake?
Disney live action remakes
Doing
don't
that one
exist.
too.
Disney
Yeah.
live action remakes don't exist. They don't exist.
Yeah. I'm just like, why Melissa McCarthy? She's not funny.
I mean there is one thing I can appreciate. The live action remakes do make us appreciate how good the originals were.
Yeah.
I just recently went back and watched Aladdin after, what is it, a decade and a half? And my God, there's 80 minutes of story in that thing, and there is not a frame out of place. That is just so perfectly constructed of a film, and it is amazing.
Nice.
Star Wars sequels versus Bayformers. Which is worse? I might just plan that for this week. I know I need to figure out how to get the people who haven't watched
either or both.
Hmm?
Do we have the option of choosing both? Both of them are worse.
I actually cringe more at Bayformers than the sequels because of the awful humor.
I can understand that.
Like, I will take blandly bad bathos over legitimate racism.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I see your point.
And well, kind of Bay's just kind of like, I don't think he's a white supremacist because he's racist against everybody. He just hates all races equally. Since the parents in their jumpsuits talking about their kids' masturbation habits and how big his penis is are quite like, ugh, this is, I think that anybody could easily make an argument that this is just evidence that he's racist against white people as well as Asian people and black people.
How can you be racist if you're racist against everyone, including yourself?
Yeah, he's just a sociopath. I think that's a really, really accurate assessment of Michael Bay. Like, he clearly has sociopathic tendencies.
Nice. Yeah, Becca, you mentioned old classic Disney films. I revisited not the movie, but YouTube. I'll rewatch some of the best musical pieces, like "Be Prepared" and the original Lion King. My goodness, Jeremy Irons is so good. The amount of passion and sass he gives to that character, it's beautiful. It's definitely inspiration for some of my characters. I have a character coming up that's pretty much just like Jeremy Irons, Scar. Has that kind of energy. And yeah, that's what I was going for. Actually, believe it or not, Lucille, I just wrote in. That's a brand new. It was originally just the three of them, but I wanted to write in a character that connects them to where they come from, like the source that's going to come in later in the book. And I also wanted to bring in a character that is a magician, is able to camouflage them all. Because how do you invade a desert city, right? like, like how do you invade a wall without people seeing you? So I came up with that idea of she'll cast a spell to the Rukim. She'll cast a spell that will camouflage her and everyone invading, but it'll weaken her so much that she won't be able to fight. So I thought that's that part's fairly new. That's the new writer coming in and changing the old and blending them both together.
That's smart. There's also, like, if you want to look up Desert Assaults, there's actually a pretty good battle at the beginning of Prince of Persia. Persia, Sands of Time.
Oh, the movie?
Yeah.
I remember that. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, that was a pretty decent movie.
Yeah, surprisingly good video game adaptation.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, thank you guys for your feedback.
My pleasure.
Feel free to continue.
Alrighty, well, it's my turn, and we'll conclude. So, this is Knight of the Abyss, with Knight with a Knigget. That's the how it's pronounced. So, what has happened so far is that a man has been. You start off with a man who is stuck in a roiling river of lava, and he pulls his way out after several thousand years of being there. No, this person is not human. This is very much a Prometheus analog type story. But the issue is that he seems like he is clearly not human, and he is trying to get his way back to the human world, because he's in pretty much hell, essentially. And on the regular Earth, Idrisil, a man by the name of Arthur Varys Calder is tasked by his old friend the prince with taking care of cultist activity that is developed throughout the kingdom. And also his dad has been dealing with a financial crisis, but he's gotten a new investor who is trying to help him out with getting the financial backing that he needs. So that's the main things that have happened up to this point. So let's continue. Oh, and this chapter begins with the wife of Arthur Caldor. That's his, and based kind of a mix of samurai and Polynesian cultures. That's kind of the idea of what I decided to do with that. You'll see that in a minute. Chapter 3, The Tide Comes In. Breathing slowly, Kara knelt before her bow, glaive, and sword and tonso dagger as they rested on the sand. She's already wearing the layered steel armor of a daimya, her helmet by her side. Closing her eyes, she lit the incense candles, then placed her hands on her knees and bowed her head. Great, Dagonia, I come before you as I go into battle, she said, inhaling the sweet-smelling incense. My offering is the souls that my blade will send to you as your eternal servants, or mine own, should I meet either a worthy opponent, or it is your will that misfortune befall me. Slowly she breathed in the smell, then opened her eyes and took up her sword and dagger in their combined sheath. With one fluid motion, she drew the sword and held it in front of her face. The weapon was very unlike the rapiers and long swords that the Nordenbard soldiers preferred. For one thing, it was slightly curved and single-edged, with a shark's head pommel and another carved into the blade with fiery fins as a sign of her rank and skill. The crossguard was a pair of shark fins that were shaped so that the curve faced outward, and the hilt was wrapped in shark skin leather. Letting the flow of the ritual guide her, Kara took the blade in both hands and bowed her head so that the pommel rested against her forehead. May your favor attend me as it always has, so that I may send souls to you until my blade is stained red with the blood of my enemies. Satisfied, she sheathed her sword, then strapped it and her dagger to the side, then picked up her glaive and sea serpent bone bow. Casually, she swung the bow case across her back, then walked out of her small shrine so that she could make her way down to the courtyard where the troops were waiting. I assume your prayers were soothing, Arthur remarked and gave her a slight smile. Smiling back, she gave Arthur a kiss on the cheek. He never liked showing affection like she was used to, but he would bend some of his stances for her. And despite that he was a dyed-in-the-wool, uncompromising atheist, he had never disparaged her beliefs or her goddess, which made her love him even more. Hopefully we'll see each other again soon. She smiled, holding him close. She lowered her voice slightly so that only he could hear her. Keep yourself safe while I'm not there to watch your back. I will, Arthur promised, tugging her back. Reluctantly, they separated, and she let him go. Carl watched sadly as he swung into his saddle and motioned his troops to follow him out the main gate. Multi-layered light steel armor clinking, Baruch, her Oni Darak bodyguard, walked up beside her, massive frame towering over her like a mountain, his demon mask covering the lower half of his face, only exposing his eyes. You'll be fine, he remarked, cracking his gauntleted fist. If he is not, I will fetch him back for you. Your concern for my husband's well-being is most comforting, Kara said wryly as she stroked the shark head pommel on her sword hilt. Breathing in, she adjusted her layered gauntlets, then pulled her own demon mask from Ath's saddle and fixed it to her face. Get mounted. We move to the outlying towns. A perpetual green fog rested near the ground of the old forest, giving it a sickly air. Trees as wide as castle towers extended toward the heavens, the thick canopy draped over deep and heavy roots rising above the ground like gnarled hands. Eyes on the fog, Arthur sent his scouts forward into the forest before he led the rest of his troops through the thick tree line. The forest itself was several thousand acres wide, large enough to encompass an entire kingdom, with 4 province castles buried in its depths. Loosening his rapier in its scabbard, Arthur nudged Shayla into the fog. His 400 troops, a mix of ages and knights, followed him dutifully, though all of them had an air of wariness. Going to this place would be going in blind. They would have to use their maneuverability as opposed to brute force, and their visibility would be limited. Admittedly, that's how I like it. Arthur grinned slightly and patted Shayla on the neck. The piebald mare tossed her head as if eager to run forward, but she restrained herself without his need to pull on the reins. I like getting creative. Casually, he motioned to Ananias. Take some knights and ride forward. We need to begin canvassing the area for any possible activity. Work with the scouts, though. I want as few losses as possible. It will be done. The preceptor bowed and motioned some of his men to ride forward with him. Arthur pulled out a map of the forest in his mind and carefully selected the route he was going to take. Before the departure, Arthur had carefully planned out what he wanted to do in terms of his troop movements. The idea was to spread out into small groups of 50 to 100. That way the enemy couldn't get ahead of them or move away without getting caught. The mages would provide support for the knights, and hopefully they would work together without much difficulty. Once they were far enough into the the other group leaders began making their troops off along their designated routes, some dismounting so that they could more easily maneuver through the woods, while the other rode off at a trot for enhanced speed. Arthur kept his own group moving further and further down the forest road. Eventually, they reached a large ruined castle, and when they found it was empty, they set up a base camp within the broken stones. Once his men were safely encamped in the ruins, Arthur unsaddled Shayla and gave her a feed bag. Satisfied that his horse was situated, Arthur unclipped his crossbow, then loaded the weapon. And as he walked up to the top of an open tower, a few of the sentries nodded to him as he took up position next to them, then turned their attention to the fog-shrouded trees. What do you think, sir? One of them asked. Think we'll find the bastards in this murk? If I wanted to keep hidden for a long time or even conduct a guerrilla war, I'd hide here. Arthur set his crossbow aside, careful to lock the trigger mechanism, then drew his rapier to test the edge. Keep an eye out, lads. The enemy won't attack us head on. Mordred limped further and further through the hellish landscape, not quite knowing where he was going. All he knew was he needed to get further and further from his prison. Now that I'm trapped here, the only way to get out is for a vessel to be given to my spirit, he said to the sword resting on his shoulder, who to this point was his only traveling companion. The likelihood of that is not very high, though. As ever, the sword remained starkly mute. Mordred didn't mind. He'd have to get used to talking at length, especially if someone decided to generously give him their body. Likely it would be an old, decrepit body that he would have to expend significant effort to reforge to his liking. Or perhaps there would be someone who still remembered him and longed for his return. How long has it been on Yggdrasil since I was locked away? I imagine that Fenrir and Fafnir actually destroyed themselves, locking my brethren away by now. Mordred sighed. I thought the cycle would keep perpetuating itself. The old gods were thrown down by the new, and they in turn are destroyed by the rising generation. He sighed and swung his blade absently, scoring a long gash in the ground before returning it to his shoulder. He sighed, but no. They plan to give their lives, to lock them away and divest them of their presence in the physical plane. Now I will have to fight my siblings eternally if they ever get loose. Slight correction, it's not a talking sword. He's talking to his sword because he's bored. The thought wasn't a pleasant one. Hopefully, he had only been released because his fetters had been imperfect, since his own brethren had thrown him into the Amaran plain and chained him in a river of fire for signing against them. Surely the bonds created by Fenrir and Fafnir would be enough to hold Alexandria and the others. I doubt it, he muttered, adjusting his grip so his hand enclosed the hooked semicircular spiked pommel of his sword as the leverage point to keep the flat of his blade on his shoulder. Casually, he ran a long nail down the edge of the blade, letting his mind roam back to the last time he'd used it. Desperate fight against Alexandria at the gates of Blackyear, trying to defend Fenra from his former friend, Caesarius slamming into him from behind and throwing him off balance, and his sister's blade going right through his chest. His mind flinched back from the memory of his former siblings throwing his spirit down into the depths of the ravine, chained and bound. Don't think about it. He forced himself away from the memory and back to the present. I didn't betray them. I did betray them. Mordred admitted to the sword, though the weapon had been there throughout his exploits. But Fenra and Fafnir were my little sisters, after all. Even if I crafted their bodies out of living water, the living water and earth of Idrisil herself. Looked at the sky, wondering if they were somewhere where he could find them. Likely not, but he could hope. There are none of those damn cultist bastards in here, milady. The innkeeper leading Kara into the cellar of his establishment shuddered away. The watch is already through here. They do a fine job. Fine job indeed. None of these houses have been missed during the searches. That was not the case from Kara's experience over the past 3 days. Oh, most of the supposed cultists she'd found in the other cities were just conjurers dabbling in dark mad sorcery, with a few who were just swept up in a fad. But they still had their little meetings in secret hollows. The problem was that the town of Brina itself was very old, and several buildings had entrances to the catacombs under the streets that were the most common meeting area for the cultists. Nothing organized, just some pathetic souls who don't know what to do. Kara thought as she tested the walls, carefully looking for any sign of an entrance to the catacombs. Nothing, just solid walls. Breathing in, Kara nodded to the innkeeper, then walked back up to the top of the stairs. Baruch glanced around, his enormous metal-studded Kanabar club resting on his shoulder. Not for the first time, Kara said a prayer to the goddess for putting him at her side. When she gave him the nod, the big Oni Darak slid his monstrous club back into his back sheath and followed her out. Something smells strange, Baruch said with a grimace. I don't like this place. Yes, Kara agreed, stroking the hilt of her curved sword. Either they're all cultists, or... She paused. Get everyone out now. Baruch didn't pause to question. He just lumbered off casually. With a curt motion, Kara motioned the other members of her guard to accompany her. The Norden Bard assigned to her as her secondary bodyguards moved in around her, hands on their swords. Hopefully the people in the town wouldn't notice the sudden shift. Casually, Kara whistled, neighing eagerly. Wrath trotted up to her and stamped his hoof. The horse was definitely an ugly monster in some ways, but he was vicious and intelligent, and she still loved him. And the big brute knew it well. He nuzzled her affectionately, and she scratched him on the neck in the spot she liked. My lady, a soldier ran up to her with an open paper. We need to leave. There's been a couple of ambushes in another set of towns. We just received a messenger crow, and if we don't move now, we'll lose the chance to find some of the scum. Ambushes in the other towns, Kara mused, glancing around for Baruch. Where was he, anyway? What do you... A crossbow bolt hit the messenger in the breastplate, going right through the metal and into his heart. Another shot from another building to her back, but before it could hit her, one of her guards slammed into her, knocking her to the ground so the arrow could deflect off the edge of his armor. He rolled off her and raised his shield over her, followed quickly by the others. Not for the first time since coming to the cold coast, Old East, Kara thought that her people might be somewhat short-sighted in dismissing shields as a sign of weakness. Start running, Kara ordered, keeping her voice calm as she put her hand on her sword, or his wrath reluctantly escaped. You'd be useless here. Get into one of the houses, cut your way through them without mercy. Yes, lady, they said, their firm discipline and unit cohesion taking over under pressure. Before they could start moving, a group of people with what looked like stolen armor burst out of the houses, including the inn they'd just come out of. Or they had a crude trefoil sigil of a red flame, green gust of wind, and a blue splash of water gathered in a triangle to differentiate themselves from the silver tree of the Northern Bard. More crossbow bolts fell, but the shields deflected the quarrels off the metal, though a few did lodge themselves into the steel and wood. However, as soon as the ones with stolen armor ran at them, the crossbows stopped, likely to prevent friendly fire when the two sides clashed. Get into the house, Kara yelled, pointing toward the house where most of the arrows had come from. Break down the door if you have to. Two of her bodyguards broke from formation, rushed to one of the windows, and threw themselves through it, entering it. Sounds of fighting came from inside the house, but soon the door was broken open to reveal one of the men who'd gone into the house. Keeping their shields up, her bodyguards quickly moved into the inn, right as the smells of smoke began coming from above them. What in the goddess's name? One of her guards looked around, and the cinders began falling down before a bale of burning hay crashed down the stairs, spreading smoke and flame all through the room. They planned this out well, Kara realized, and they don't care how much destruction to their own city they cause. They just want to kill us. Growling, Kara looked around for a means of escape. Then the only way seemed to be the back door, or she motioned her troops to rush through. Hopefully we can find out a way out of this trap. Before they could move far, the cultist soldiers caught up to them, their strangely marked armor reflecting the light of the fire. Without thinking, Kara leaped forward and put her hand on her sword. In one fluid motion, she unsheathed the blade of dragon bone steel and slashed two of the first men and across their chests, their blade S-plates doing as little good as a silk dress might have. 201 and 202, she thought, just before, or she dodged another clumsy strike from another cultist and stabbed her dagger through his neck before throwing it into the foot of another man, pinning it to the wooden floor. The cultist only had time to howl in pain before she slit his throat. 204. Clearly scared now, the other cultist backed away from Kara as if she were a shark in the bay. Baring her teeth, Kara leaned down and pulled out her knife, then wiped it clean. Then she attacked. Another man fell, this time with a weapon through his chest, the breastplate smoking slightly as she pulled it out. Her guards sprang into action, using their shields to beat back the enemy and force them back. But the fire was quickly spraying toward them. Without another method of escape, Kara cut down 3 men. 207. Then rolled out of the way of another set of crossbow bolts. Thankfully, since the houses behind them were on fire, it was only from one direction, so her men could just had to form a shield wall to hold up and hold off the cultists. The yell, more men wearing the silver tree rushed into the street on horseback and smashed into the cultist, though there was one figure that outran them despite his lack of a mount. Baruch kept at pace with the horses despite being at full gallop and swung his metal club at a studded club like a thunderbolt on pottery. Any cultist that met at the shaft of his club fell, metal and flesh bending around the ancient wood. Once the fighting cleared, Baruch nodded to Kara and threw something long and curved to her. Kara caught her bow and quiver, then took aim and fired instinctively at where the crossbow bolts had been and coming from. 2 screams and 2 falls into the street. 209. Get into the buildings and start clearing the town. Kara leaped onto Wrath's back, the brown warhorse tossing his head as they prepared to continue the slaughter. 3 hours later, Brina burned, and all the corpses along with it. Kara stood next to one of the pyres, arms folded as she looked down at the piled-up bodies. 230, she thought, wiping off the blood from her sword and sheathing it. My lady! She turned to see a group of soldiers dragging a pair of cultists with bloody noses and clearly broken legs. Both were young, probably swept a bit in the fervor of the moment, not really true believers. One with the beak of a nose, the other with a pair of sizable warts on his face. We have a pair of the bastards, as you asked. Nodding to her men, Kara walked over to the cultists and folded her arms. You have 2 choices. Talk and receive no further pain, or refuse to talk and get further pain. Choose now. What do you want? Wardface babbled. Where are the rest of your compatriots? Kara asked. Most of them are in the forest, Beaknose said quickly. We were forced to do it. Please, don't hurt us. Baruch, Kara called. Get the men mounted on as many horses as we can. We need to ride for the forest as fast as possible. Her bodyguard bowed and rushed off, as ever, faster than a man and of his bulk should move. I hope we're not too late. And that's the end.
Very nice.
Yeah, even though it was almost immediately disproven, I do like the notion of black magic being just a fad.
What do you mean being a fad?
I just picture, like some old boomer sitting sitting at home going, yeah, these youngins with their black magic. Back in my day, I tell you.
Done bingo. I want to know what's on this bingo sheet, please.
I do too. That sounds funny. Sounds pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. Especially like the found it interesting with the woman killing with the sword and counting every death. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's a very it's one kind of thing that I kind of like, okay, how like her culture is basically built around counting the souls that they send to their goddess in her watery halls.
Oh.
I see.
And the more souls you send, the more honored you will be when you eventually die.
Gotcha.
Like a reverse Valhalla.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, it's edgy-ish.
Your reaction to that is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I imagine there's probably a few serial killers poking around in heaven. How did you get in here? Oh, yeah, poison. Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, they probably make an exception for gas. Poison gas is probably cheating.
Edgy was indeed one on the list. This wasn't that edgy. This is pretty normal. It's not like two stepsisters getting it on with two sisters getting it on with their stepbrother.
Oh no. That's cursed territory. Stuff like that is the reason why people hate anime. All right. I'll be an advocate for anime, bro. Anime is incredible. You watch something like Attack on Titan or Vinland Saga about Vikings and about like the about that time period, the historical fiction, and then you got that cursed stuff, like what you just mentioned. Then you got the cursed, and everyone thinks of the cursed when they think of anime.
Well, technically, you already have it. I read it for Writer Showcase 69.
Yes, I didn't even listen to that. all the build up, I was like, I don't know if I want to listen to this.
It wasn't that bad.
I wouldn't know. I haven't listened. I was like, man, this is awkward.
Hey, they aren't related by blood.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, murder counting. Skipping through the fields with a gallant bard that day. So cute. So cute.
Adorable.
Yeah. Yeah. Stabbing people is fun and deal a great deal of damage. Yeah, especially in Dark Souls, which was a lot of the inspiration for some of the aesthetics of this. Though Yu-Gi-Oh was also where a lot of the aesthetics of certain characters come from.
Gotta be proud of your influences.
Yeah. Yeah. Triple D, the Triple D archetype of Yu-Gi-Oh was very much an inspiration on some of the demons and the elder gods looks. You're poison. Poison, right? I do have good Abyss Walker. Yes. Watch out for Artorias. Knight Artorias in this one. Since he'll show up at some point. At least something that takes heavy inspiration from his design, because that is one of the coolest designs I've ever seen for a thing ever. I love Knight Artorias' design. That's really cool. Ornstein's also going to show up, but it's the armor is actually wearing by a psychopathic lady played by Lynn Collins, at least in my head. And anybody who's seen John Carter, she's the lady who played Deja Thoris, or who is Wolverine's my dead girlfriend in X-Men Origins.
Mm.
Yeah.
One day we'll send you to the Shadow Realm, Dunny boy. Who's to say I haven't been there and back, and I've just nothing can be done to me anymore.
It's like putting Zaphod Beeblebrox in the total perspective vortex.
Alrighty. Don't believe it. And if you do, it is very much catapulted existence when you weigh it on the wholesomeness scale. I do, yeah, and I have written. Don't worry, this one has a good relationship that is very, very wholesome. Just wait. And I have written wholesome romances. Hera and Narcissus was a very, very wholesome relationship. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, I think we will conclude it there. Thank you guys for coming. Any other
Thanks for
thoughts?
inviting us.
Any other thoughts before we leave, or is that pretty much it?
I
Nope.
think that's it.
No
Alrighty.
thoughts here.
Alrighty, cool. Adios. Bye.
you later.
Goodbye.
Bye.